Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Live Open Forum. I am Captain Logan, and it's time to answer some of your questions. If you're watching live, thanks a whole bunch for being here. And if you're watching this after the fact, I'm sorry I couldn't answer your questions, but that can only happen if you actually show up during the show when I'm answering the questions. But if you want to ask me and Eric things that we can answer later on when we're not live, you can always send us questions on Geekvolution's Facebook, or you can leave comments in the Omnibus, and we'll try to take a look at those and answer them on the Q&A, the letters pages on the Omnibus. Thanks so much for being here. A lot of folks here already. Good to see you, and I'm going to start answering questions here pretty quick because they are already starting to pop up. Last week, I had a couple of complaints from folks that want me to try to answer questions a little bit faster. I'll do my level best, but I like to be thorough. I have a hard time not saying whatever comes to my mind, and to try to be as like I said, thorough as possible. So I'll do my level best to answer a few more questions in a given show, but I want to give all the questions that I do answer their due and make sure that I'm not copping out or just giving a real quick clipped answer. So anyway, I wanted to somebody just commented on my slowing down a little bit. I appreciate that. Thanks for noticing. I want to talk a little bit about something I've been kicking around that I put a Facebook message up about the other day, and I wanted to talk about this on the channel proper for folks who might not have seen that. I want to be totally transparent about this and just let people know what's been going on with Supergirl Rewind. And as you've noticed, I haven't made that show. I haven't done an episode of that show since before the new year, and some of that, of course, is because I'm hip deep in Batman year, and I want to get a lot of that written before I get back to focusing on Rewind. And I'm working on that really diligently right now, trying to get as many of those scripts written as I can before we start filming a lot of episodes. But part of the reason that I haven't been able to focus on Rewind as much as I would like to, just in general, because even when I'm doing that show, it's not the weekly, which may be impossible now, honestly, given just the life stuff and how lengthy those tend to run, and again, how thorough I like to be with those. But also, but not even especially regularly. I think I except for this year, I tend to average about one a month, but part of the reason I haven't been able to really prioritize that show is because of copyright flags. And at the moment, we have upwards of 30 episodes of Superhero Rewind that either are not monetized or are blocked. And I think actually at the moment, I've managed to curtail that a little bit with the couple of episodes that were blocked worldwide, but I'm still waiting to see if my appeal went through. And if it doesn't, then those episodes will continue to be blocked. So the question that I posed to Facebook the other day was whether or not people would be understanding and okay with Superhero Rewinds that didn't have stills in them, doing just an audio version of that show with maybe me on screen, although I don't love doing them that way, or just a picture. And if just getting the analysis was worth not having visuals, because not only does it suck if I can't monetize the videos, because those are kind of my bread and butter, and this is a really fun thing to do, but it's also my job. But also, I lost my train of thought. I apologize. So like there's just the fact that they get hit with a copyright flag, so I'm not able to monetize them. But there's also just the people not being able to see them. So I don't want to put that much work in something and then post it, and then people not be able to actually listen to the review and enjoy it. So overwhelmingly, in fact, I think every single person said that they would be okay with that, or they would be. Some of them I would be disappointed, but I would rather have that if it meant if it was between that and no rewinds at all. And if folks are all right with that, it cuts down on my time in making that show a great deal. So if I was able to just write and record them and basically just post them. I'd like to think that I could do them more often, especially whenever I get finished with Batman here. And so and I'm seeing a lot of people in the comments right now also saying that they would be okay with that. Also, a lot of people talking about my and Sarah's next child. We've been talking a lot on this forum about the fact that if it's a boy, we're going to name it Michael, and if it's a girl, we're going to name it Carrie, because my kids are Jason and Freddie, and we have to keep going with that horror thing, even though we're not horror fans, and it's just amusing. I think a lot of people are kind of, or at least some folks like me, really looking forward to seeing whether we get a girl or a boy this time. I was really hoping, I'm really hoping for a girl this time, and we're not going to find out ahead of time. In fact, I think Sarah is a week away from the doctor visit where we could learn if it was a boy or a girl, and we're not going to do that. We're going to find out on the day. So, of course, when Sarah delivers, I'll let you know the big news and whether we got a girl or a boy, and whether it's Carrie or Michael. But anyway, Asher Ashley, that's funny, but we really like Michael, and I really nothing against anyone named Ashley, but I don't care for that name as a girl name the child Predator. That's hilarious. Anyway, so the reason I'm talking about this Rewind thing is partly just to give people the news about that and what I'm considering, and allow you guys that maybe aren't on our social media to comment about it. So if you're, again, especially if you're watching this after the fact, please leave a comment and let me know what you think about that. But I'm seriously considering a couple of different avenues with this, and this is another thing I would love feedback on. So one thing I'm considering doing, as I said, is just recording them and posting them and not doing stills at all. Another thing we could potentially do, although it wouldn't save me time, I wouldn't get them out as often as I could without doing the stills at all. But if enough people really want that the original format and want more of a production from Superhero Rewind, I am considering making it a Patreon perk. And I hate having a paywall for anything beyond After Dark. I hate having a paywall for anything that's a review, but I have always promised this, and this will never change. Mark my words, I will not ever have a paywall for reviews, but I could do a thing where there's another version of it where there wouldn't be any different content in the actual analysis. It would simply be the Rewind in the original format that would have stills and things, and so and just be more of a production. So I'd love to hear from people. If that's something a lot of people really, really want, if I could guarantee 40 or 50 new patrons from it, and it would be at the bottom tier. It would be the $2 tier. I wouldn't ask for any more than that. But if I could guarantee that we would get 40 or 50 new patrons with that, I would consider doing it that way. Otherwise, I will probably just make, and I really hate doing that because I like the production that Rewind is, but I will, but there are also some pros to this too. I will definitely, if I don't hear from enough people, just start to make it audio. The big plus with that is that it becomes more of a podcast, and a lot of folks like just listening to that show. I heard from a lot of people who said, I don't even watch it. I just listen to it in the background. And a lot of folks have told me that they would prefer it to be a kind of a podcast thing anyway. Now, I won't put it on a podcast service just because there's overhead for that. And again, I can't monetize that. So I would keep it on YouTube. There are increasingly more and more ways, though, to listen to YouTube videos while being able to play them in the background and turn your phone off. And go look into those things. I've been doing it with the Opera browser for the iPhone, and there are other ways to do it too on Android. But look into that because if you're concerned about having to take up your whole phone for YouTube, the processing and just not being able to do anything else on your phone while you're listening to a video. There are ways now to do that, but I feel like it would be easier to get away with them being whatever length I want them to be if I didn't have to take, the 15, 20 hours it sometimes takes to edit those, but also and I don't get a lot of complaints about this, but I think fewer people would notice the length if they weren't expected to actually sit down and watch the video. So anyway, that's Trevor Patron. Read my lips. No new taxes on Superhero Rewind. Yeah, seriously. But read my lips. I definitely do not want to ever, ask folks to donate on Patreon in order to get review content. Now, the pardon me, the talk show thing with After Dark is kind of a different thing, and that allows us to be a little bit more lewd and stuff if we want to do that, and to do something uncensored. But I've always felt like that's a thing that kind of makes sense. But we just got a $10 super chat, and by the way, that is open if anybody ever wants to donate on this show to do a super chat. I really appreciate you doing that, folks. Thanks a bunch. $10 super chat. Hey Cap, been a huge fan of the channel since early 2012, but never joined a live show before. Well, thanks for being here. Good to see you. Offhand, what would you say your top 5 worst animated DC movies are? And keep up the awesome work. Well, wow, top 5 off the top of my head. Goodness. Okay, so we're getting started on this straight away. And after I answer this, I'll start getting to other questions in the comments. Let me go ahead and copy all of this and get ready to do that. Like I said, I'm going to try to go a little bit more lickety-split if humanly possible, because I know there are a lot of questions. A lot of people want to hear their questions and my comments about them. But anyway, so top 5 worst, I'll throw a few out. So the worst of them right now, in my opinion, is most certainly Batman Harley Quinn. That kind of goes without saying. That movie is just offensive and baffling, and doesn't hold together as a piece at all. And Eric and I, if you want to watch that along with us, we just did a Batmania on that. But as far as other DC animated movies that I really dislike, I'm not the biggest fan of Sub-Zero. I think it's just really, really boring. Although I don't know if it's the worst of if it belongs in that list. I think from that era, Mystery of the Batwoman is probably worse than that, and actually maybe even more boring. Paced worse than that, most assuredly. I'm not a big fan of Superman Unchained. I think Brainiac Attacks is probably one of the worst. It's definitely up there. And then the DC 52 movies, just in general, are pretty bad, most of them. But I think the first of the Batman ones, what is that? Son of Batman? I think that's probably the worst of those. And Judas Contract is pretty bad also. Iced and Jet, this is an interesting question. Why don't you like reaction videos? So obviously, to each his own with this. I think a reaction video can be interesting or fun to watch if somebody is charismatic and clever and creative and really good in the moment in improvisation. So like Vince and I have done, years ago, did 1 or 2 videos where we would react to something we were watching for the first time and just clip it together and post what we thought were the funniest beats and the best jokes. What I don't care for, and what I think doesn't really add very much to the YouTube reviewing culture, if you even want to put it within that world, is just people looking at something and freaking out and losing their minds. A lot of the time that looks really manufactured to me, where like regardless of what they saw, that's how they were going to act, or the reverse of that, just acting really outraged because you're seeing something that you don't like. I would much rather something of substance. I don't mind and I don't watch a lot of these things, to be honest with you, but the ones that I've seen, I don't mind the reaction videos so much where somebody turns on a trailer and looks at it and isn't saying a lot, because like I immediately resist dead air just because I have kind of a radio show mentality about that. But when that's the job, when the idea is just and I think this could be valid. Let's just see what another fan what their immediate reaction to a thing is. As long as you can somehow tell that it's not, like I said, manufactured, it's maybe okay. But what I much prefer are the videos where someone is just, looking at the trailer or whatever it is, and you're kind of seeing them noodle it and process it, and maybe they have a reaction or two, and then at the end of that, they actually give you a quick review of it. They actually talk about it a little bit. I much prefer that. But I think that as a phenomenon has gotten a little bit out of hand, and I just don't feel like there's, for the most part, a whole lot of skill involved. I think there's a lot of people who do video game videos where I totally see how there's skill there and how there's talent and why people tune into them and watch them. And I have looked at some of that here and there. But what I don't get are people who are just simply sitting in a chair and I'm watching you very, very nearly just watching me back. I really don't understand that. Okay, let's look at some more questions here. Man, at some point I might try to get a moderator for this show, because I know I miss a lot of stuff, and for whatever reason, we have continued to garner a pretty nice crowd on a Wednesday afternoon. So once again, I'm going to look from the bottom to the top, and then I'll come back down here after a bit. Cinematographic, do you think that Arkham Origins is at the point where it's been in the public consciousness yet? Yeah, Arkham Origins is certainly old enough that I could do a Superhero Rewind on it. I don't know if I'm going to. I don't want to promise that. I will definitely do Arkham Knight at some point, because that story frustrates me because of all the things I love about it until we get to the third act, and it just doesn't come together. Origins is not a great story. There's a little bit of okay there, but overall, I feel like that was pretty much just an excuse to get another one of those games out that year. And the Arkham games are not movies, so they don't count as things that I have to definitely do because I'm reviewing every superhero movie ever made, which once again will be easier to do if I'm not editing skills, and not worrying about whether or not the video is even going to get to continue to see the light of day. But anyway, with Origins, it kind of honestly is just going to be a matter of, do I feel like talking about that or not? I may go back and play through that again and decide if I really want to weigh in on that in the in-depth analysis kind of format. What else? Good old gamer, this is just a comment about something we said on the omnibus. I watched your omnibus yesterday. We got the first half of the omnibus out. The second half is going to be up today or tomorrow. I had some technical snafus yesterday with my editor, so with my editing program with Vegas. So I was hoping to get that up this morning, and that has not happened, but it should be up tomorrow. A lot of the big stuff from that show is already up. Especially the Punisher, or maybe that's the only thing, but that's kind of the big thing, right? The Punisher spoiler cast I did with Vince, but Primetime, the rest of Primetime Crisis is in that, and I'm talking about the last half of the first season of Star Trek Discovery in that, so you can watch my head spin around and watch me completely fall apart and lose my mind and have difficulty even putting a coherent thought together. But anyway, I watched your omnibus yesterday, and you were wondering why Power Rangers Tommy was so popular. It's because he's been in the most shows. Don't forget he was in Dino Thunder later on. There is some truth to that, but I'm telling you, I really think that a lot of the people that were in the line I was in a couple years ago for Jason David Frank were people who remembered the Green Ranger or the White Ranger being a real big deal and never looked at Power Rangers again after that. You're right, for younger people, maybe people in their 20s right now who saw Dino Thunder or watched whatever version they did, and then they watched and then went back. But I'm telling you, there are a lot of people that only care about Mighty Morphin that have that one thing buried in the back of their mind, ingrained as a big, giant cultural phenomenon, and the only thing they really remember from that show is Tommy. And I'm not even saying that's necessarily a problem, but that's my observation. You can go look at my rant in Geeks Not Nerds this week, and currently that's just on the omnibus, but the GNM will come up here in at least a couple days. We did a GNN about renumbering in comics, but then my rant for that time for that show, is about how at Planet Comic-Con, the line for Amy Jo Johnson was a whole lot smaller than the line for Jason David Frank, and she doesn't do a lot of shows, and I was really excited to see her, and I was just a little bit surprised that it was more of a question than anything, why so few people were there to see her. Dan Schneider, do you think J.J. Abrams would have done a better sequel than Rian Johnson? I think we talk about that on the Omnibus this week, and so I'm not going to weigh in on that right now. Yes, Eric and I did answer that question for the letters pages this week, so look forward to that when that video comes up. Cinematographics, which one do you think is better written, Young Justice 1 and 2 or Beware the Batman? I have not seen enough of Beware the Batman or Season 2 Young Justice to make a an educated comment on that, to come down on that one way or another. I think what I've seen of Beware the Batman, I'm impressed with, but I've only watched the first quarter of that season. I did start in on Young Justice Season 2, which I'm hoping to cover on the next Omnibus. And it's really interesting. I feel like they skipped a season or two, and I'm not sure yet if that's really warranted or not, or if I wish some of the stuff that they just totally skipped was dramatized. It feels a lot like they were worried that they wouldn't get another season, which of course didn't happen, but now it's coming back. But it really feels like they were worried that they wouldn't get another season, so they just jumped to stuff that they had planned and wanted to do a lot later. It's interesting. I think Eric's right that it's just with the 3 or 4 shows I've seen so far, I think Eric's right that season has way too many characters, and I get why people don't like it as well as the first season and aren't as impressed with or captivated by the characters. But I do think there's so far already a lot of really interesting in that show, and it's wonderfully dramatic, and it still remains a great, not really kid show, for superheroes in animation. Wow, so much to comment. Let's keep going. Do you have any, Mr. Mike, do you have any favorite fast food places you like to eat? That's fun. I'm not doing as much fast food as I used to, or really any, I guess there's stuff you would consider fast food that I'm sort of okay doing. I'm more fast casual these days, really. As I've been trying to eat better and slim down a little bit, I've been avoiding McDonald's and Taco Bell and things like that. I haven't eaten any of that stuff since December of last year, or maybe even a little bit before that. I still do Chipotle occasionally, although not the way I used to. I thought I was completely done with Chipotle, and I finally figured out how to eat there again. But I get tacos. I don't eat all of them in one sitting. I get less meat than I used to. I get a lot less of the hot sauce than I used to. So I've been really altering how I eat stuff. So really the only way I can answer this question is I still like some fast casual. I still eat pizza. I'm trying to cut back a little bit, but I don't know how to live without pizza. I love pizza, so we still get Papa John's every week, but I have fewer slices than I used to. I eat Subway some. Like I said, I still go to Chipotle a little bit, but I eat a lot more kind of, sandwich places and stuff like that now. And I eat a lot of Panera, which is not fast food, but as far as eating out goes, that's kind of more of the sort of thing I've been doing lately. Daniel Davis, Brainiac Attacks is just a cash in. I absolutely agree with that. That was one of the fastest reviews of Superhero Rewind I ever read. I ever wrote, excuse me. That thing just wrote itself. Lewis Cox, hey Captain Logan, there's a rumor that Hasbro wants everything Power Rangers, which I'll be okay with, I guess, but I don't know. I didn't think that was just a rumor. I thought it would, because we talk about that on the Captain's Log, so if that turns out to not be true, I apologize, but it looked like pretty above board news that Hasbro was getting the Master's license from Bandai, and that Bandai was, I guess, still doing some Power Rangers, but just wasn't going to have the Master's license, which, as I understand it, is the license that allows them, A, to make things from every show. Apparently, you can get the license for just Mighty Morphin, but you can't get it for everything. And B, that allows them, it basically gives them the patent for Megazords, for Zords that come together to make a Megazord, as opposed to just separate Zords that cannot transform. So transforming Megazords. Blue Dragon 5? Hi, Blue Dragon 5. Would you consider doing both versions? He's talking about Supergirl Rewind and having a monetized link video to the Rewind, shorter video that gets you funding faster. Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. But I would do it through Patreon, just because, again, I can't monetize it if YouTube blocks it or if they copyright flag it. And I have had videos that get flagged regardless of whether or not they're public. So I can make it unlisted, but just because it's unlisted doesn't mean that it won't get copyright flagged, and that doesn't seem to affect the bots that flag these things at all, the algorithms. Let's keep going up for a little bit, and then I will comment on some more recent comments. We're already almost half an hour in. Once again, thank you for that super chat. And anybody that wants to do the super chat thing, I will certainly prioritize those questions and make sure to answer them more or less just when they pop up. Really appreciate it when folks do that for us. And anybody that does now or ever has contributed to the channel, I just want you to know how much we really, really appreciate it. A lot of people talking about Star Wars and stuff. Looking for more questions here. Let me... Give me 1 second. I just want to see if there's any other good questions up here before I start skipping back around. Azim, should art be socially responsible? There's ever-increasing cultural pressure for it to be so. Your thoughts? Wow, what a heavy question to get off the cuff like this. Socially responsible. And that's a real kind of vague way to ask that question. I don't know if we're talking about, like cultural representation, or if we're talking about making sure that things are politically correct or aren't going against modern sensibilities and that kind of thing. My answer to that tends to be no. I think you should be socially responsible in the sense that, I think there's different people are going to look at what that means differently. So being responsible socially to me is about doing things like not presenting things like violence as okay, like violence without consequences, that kind of thing. Knowing what you were saying and why you're saying it, I think is socially responsible. I think people should. I think artists. Art is about self-expression. I think artists should be allowed to, and should, write what they know, write what they feel, explore the truth through their fiction, and that doesn't mean telling me what I'm supposed to think about something. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of fiction. There's a lot of different ways to tell stories and reasons to tell stories. So I don't mean that it's bad. You really do have me on the spot with this. I don't think that it's bad to have to do morality plays or fables or even parables if it's clear that that's what it is. And so in that sense, the piece would be taking up for a particular idea or making a particular point or trying to present a certain lesson. And you may agree or disagree with that lesson, but saying from my perspective, this is what is right, this is what is wrong, is different from saying, from bullying people in fiction and saying you are wrong if you don't agree with this. And that's what I really can't get behind, and looks more like, I hate to say propaganda than anything, where we're basically trying to preach to a choir and exclude everyone that is not in that choir. I think different perspectives should be heard even when they're not popular, and I think that when you're and I'm sure I'm going to get in trouble with some people for saying this, but this is just how I feel about it. Stories are, by and large, traditional narrative about characters before they're about some kind of political agenda. And again, it is okay for a piece to more or less side with a certain idea, I think, as long as it's compelling otherwise, that like I am invested in the protagonist and his or her plight and their journey, and B, as long as it is presenting its ideas in such a way that it's not telling me that I'm an idiot if I don't agree with it. That I have to and like surely I already think exactly the way it does, and so that's a way in which I don't I don't buy into the being socially responsible idea with the folks that think that being socially responsible is we all are saying the same things about the culture right now because that's what's hip and in and popular, and what the at least outspoken majority or even sometimes minority is telling us that is right or wrong. And I'm being vague and cryptic about the things that I'm thinking about right now, of course, because I don't want to get political about it. But that's how I feel about it. Heavy question. Gonna scroll back up just a little bit more to try to grab some of these questions from the very beginning of the show. Blue Dragon 5, I think I already answered one of his questions, but I'll answer this one too. What's your expectation and hopes for the Death of Superman two-parter? Okay, the big thing I hope for, which I'm not going to get, is that it is not too much of the tone of these 52 movies, although the Teen Titans versus Justice League one was really good, so maybe that's not too big of a deal. What I really wish was that we were straight up adapting it and making it look like it did in the 90s, the original story, with going as far as to having the D-list Justice League in everything. I think that'd be a lot of fun. I can't expect that. Not a huge deal that we're not doing that. The problem is with the New 52 based continuity that they still have, which is hilarious because we're already 2 years into Rebirth and it's not even called Rebirth anymore. And I've talked about this before, but I don't care about that Superman. He's not interesting. We've never done anything with him. He hasn't even gotten his own movie. The first time we're giving him a movie is Death of Superman. So I think it's going to be difficult, and it's going to have to go out of its way to make me really appreciate Superman before they kill him. And the fact that it's a two-parter means that maybe they have more time to do that than we did in Superman Doomsday. And really funny that I'm going to have to review another animated movie that is adapting Death of Superman after I did the Superman Doomsday twice. But it's going to maybe have to work overtime to at least prove that Superman, has the ideals of and the character of, real, honest to God comic book Superman. And then I hope that more or less well, and I hesitate to say this because I was going to say, I hope that the story with Reign of the Supermen is more or less what it is in the comics. If they find ways to change it and it's really interesting and it's worth doing, there are things you can do to improve in that story, of course. I won't mind that. I just hope that all four of those characters are there and that they get enough screen time, and that Cyborg Superman is is maybe more interesting than he was in the comics, because I think that can be done, and that he is a real cool menacing villain. Those are the big things that I want, of course. Sorry, Kevin Spacey, can you please come to California? No, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. I've got a kid on the way. I'm not gonna be making any trips like that this year. Chewbacca's lover. Hey, Cap, do you think Bruce Timm could do a serious return to the DCAU, like dark and serious and not a comedy? Honestly, I think it would be smart of him to do that because he would get a lot of points from folks that were really upset about Batman and Harley Quinn and maybe make up for that a little bit. Although I think people liked Gotham by Gaslight enough that maybe he's already done that for them a little bit just because he was involved in that and his name is on it. But yeah, and this isn't so much about Batman Harley Quinn. It's easy to dismiss that and say, well, that's not, I mean, even though it's in the aesthetic and it's got Kevin Conroy's voice in it, it's not really that world at all. But it would maybe be cool to come back and do one more thing in that universe, or even a miniseries or something. But it's not something I feel like I've got to have. I mean, like, I've not watched, and I need to do this. I've still not gone back and watched all of Justice League Unlimited, but people act like that ended in such a way that maybe that it just had a really good ending. Maybe we don't need a whole lot more stuff in that universe. But anyway, okay, so I'm back down now to the bottom of the list with the most recent comments posted. I'm going to roll back up through those, and I hit most of everything before that. So I think we're trucking a little bit better today. Once again, thanks everybody for being here. It's good to see you. This is kind of a gauntlet I run every Wednesday. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's actually really fun and really relaxing, but it's a whole bunch of questions. And sometimes somebody throws a curveball at me, like asking about being socially conscious or excuse me, about being socially responsible in fiction. And I'm like, I wasn't expecting to talk about that today. That dope channel, what is the most interesting difference you've noticed between making Spawn Year and Batman Year? That's a great question. So obviously, the way I make the show is more or less the same in that, and it's like getting back riding a bike. I mean, it's been 3 years since I finished that show, but it's still you script the thing, and you get in a goofy costume and you film that, and then you've got your comic book screenshots, or your panels, and you move around them, and I figured out how to edit that in a pretty timely fashion. So even though the shows are longer, it doesn't take too horribly much longer to make one. And Spawn Year, toward the end, because I had so much continuity to keep up with and stuff, both with my continuity and Todd McFarlane's continuity, those shows got a little bit longer. So I guess the biggest difference is it's fewer episodes, and so overall it doesn't feel like as much work, but the episodes individually are a little bit bigger to make. The biggest difference is I have to do a lot more acting, and I will always use that in air quotes because I don't think I'm the best actor, but I'm doing the very best I possibly can. I'm playing more characters than I did before. In Spawn Year, I had that like supporting cast in the back half that I came in and played occasionally, but the other characters I have to play this time show up more, and more of them have actual dialogue, and I have to kind of do different voices for. So that's kind of new. And I guess the other big thing that's really different is the material is actually good, and so that I have to review, and so it's easy not to repeat myself as much, and it's easy, and I'm not losing my mind over having to constantly seriously critique something that I kind of don't want to give the time of day the more I get into it. Nightfall, at least so far, and of course I've read bits and pieces of it, and then the novel several times, but I haven't read the novel several times, but I've read bits and pieces, several of the bits and pieces that I have several times, but then I've read the novel a couple of times. Anyway, so it's material that I'm somewhat familiar with, but don't know everything in. And it's been a real surprise just to see just how good a lot of it is. And it's been nice to be able to really sink my teeth into the character stuff and the thematic stuff, and not spend the whole time just making it an exercise in how not to write. And so I've really enjoyed that. So thanks for that question. Looking for more cool questions. William Purcell, would you like to see a Kingdom Come animated miniseries? And yeah, miniseries is probably about the way to do that. Yeah, I would like to see that. And as I've said before, I think Elseworlds is the way to go for these animated things, especially the shorter ones, because a lot of those are just really easy to adapt, and it would be cool to see and easy to adapt is their own one and done thing, because they were that in the first place, and you don't have to find some way to bring viewers up to speed in a universe that not only they might not be familiar with, but that technically doesn't even count for the movie you're making, because it's not actually in the same universe that is informing all of that. So I really like going to Elseworlds for that stuff, and some of those things we can do, I think, like Gotham by Gaslight, where whether or not you thought that was really well handled, and I need to watch it again while not talking over it, but I think you could do a lot more of those things where you tell a slightly different story or a totally different story just based in the same premise. But yeah, Kingdom Come would have to be a miniseries, absolutely. And it's been a long time since I've read that. I haven't reviewed it yet. I need to do that at some point. Eric and I have talked about that for a long time. And Eric remembers not caring for it, but he hasn't read it in a really long time. So it'd be interesting for the two of us to sit down and see what we think of it now. And if I still have the same opinions I did about it before, because it really hit me in a place the first time I read it. It really got me, but that was before I looked at Watchmen and, very many other, superhero adult prose things that are about people who get superpowers but don't necessarily just do the right thing or the wrong thing, or kind of in the middle. And that's probably the first thing I read that's about superheroes that kind of see themselves as gods above men. And we do a lot of that kind of stuff now, but it's kind of interesting that we did Gods and Monsters before we did a Kingdom Come thing. Smashing Success, is it confirmed that the death of Superman 2-parter is New 52 based? Yeah, that's what I read. I do think it is in that continuity. It'd be great if I was wrong about that, but that's what I read about it when it was first announced. Donnie St. Pierre, a lot of people have accused Kathleen Kennedy of being a feminist who pushes her agenda in Star Wars. I don't think it's political. I think it's business, bringing in more consumers' thoughts. All I will say about that is I agree with you. I think that's mostly a business thing before it's pushing her own politics. And I think that's been going on with a lot of things that seem kind of pushy to me about political agendas, where it's maybe less about trying to preach a sermon that they think really needs to get out and that people need to hear, and that's important to get en masse because so many people are going to look at it, and more that those are the trendy ideas right now that will sell something. And I'm a little leery of that. I kind of beware that. Good question here. Good old gamer. Do you think there is MCU burnout, or there will be soon, or have you seen that they're able to keep things fresh enough to avoid getting too stale? So I said this on the Black Panther spoiler cast that we did with Dan, or the How We Felt About, that was basically a spoiler cast. All this technology that I don't know if is even still relevant anymore, the way we do the omnibus. Even if Marvel finally has their dud movie, and by dud, I mean a movie that doesn't perform. There are movies that I think, by and large, people don't really care for that much, like Dark World, but they still performed. Even if they have that, or an entire franchise that falls apart like that, I think they're still okay for at least 10 years. After Spider-Man, after Black Panther, and given the popularity of the Avengers films, and the big deal I'm sure Infinity War is going to be. I think that they are aware of the fact that they can't just rest on their laurels, and that they have to keep being inventive and fresh and do things like Black Panther, where we try things that are maybe a little bit more experimental, and that may or may not really appeal to people en masse. And I know some of you guys really like Thor Ragnarok. I didn't really care for that movie. I wish that we had been instead of just a straight up comedy with that. I wish that we had finally steered directly into doing the real complex politics of the Asgard world, which that story I really think should have been more about. And then we basically did that with Black Panther, and so they're paying attention to that, and or at least they hired someone who they allowed to make a movie like that, which is really great and really exciting. I don't know that there is MCU burnout. I think that there is. This whole superhero fatigue idea is really complicated, because I think some people have that in general, where they're like, I think I'm tired of superheroes, and then they watch something that they can look at on a different level and hardly even think about it as a superhero thing. I think the superhero fiction right now is so permeating and has taken over so hard that we're telling good and bad stories there, and there is a lot of variety, by and large, especially at the movie theater. And so I think that even if there is, MCU burnout with some people or superhero fatigue in general, I think we can continue to curb it as long as, I've said this before, as long as we're being creative and trying, new things and being as character driven as we can. And as long as we don't do enough stuff that is the opposite of that it ruins the things that are good. What I mean is that people stop paying for the things that are good. If the popularity of superhero stuff in general stays at the level it's at right now, we're in no danger of superhero fatigue ruining the entire pie until people stop actually buying the tasty pieces of pie. That's my 2 cents on that. William Purcell, do you think anyone will ever be able to replicate the success of the MCU? Not by trying to replicate it. That's my big thing. It's going to happen by accident when it finally happens. This whole trying to manufacture a shared universe thing for the most part has not been working. Now, I do think the Hasbro universe has a shot at being successful if they market it right and if, as Eric says, they make it all 80s period, but I don't think it'll be MCU level. I don't mean to say that no shared universe will ever work again unless someone didn't think it would be shared universe and then made a movie and then decided to make it shared after that, but it can't be the only thing they're thinking about at the expense of the movie they're making. Because of course, if all you care about is trying to cash in on the shared universe idea, and you put a movie out and it's pretty bad or boring or just really kind of middle of the road, it's not going to entice people and excite people to want to see more. If Iron Man hadn't been really fresh and different and kind of unlike anything we'd seen before, it wouldn't matter that Marvel was planning on doing more movies in their cinematic universe until they put out one that got people to want to keep going and excited about seeing all those characters on screen together. One second, folks. Recasting Logan in the omnibus. I'm not. Oh. You mean sorry. Yeah. Wolverine. I don't know who I would pick, good old gamer. And I'm sorry, I've gone to this guy several times, but he's asking interesting questions. Yeah, I'm not good at the whole fan casting thing. I'm not really sure who I would go for. I think a no-namer would be really smart, especially because that's kind of how we did it in the first place, and look how huge Hugh Jackman got. I wouldn't go for anybody has ever heard of before or has done more than a couple of things. Regard Hammerfell Cap, what would you think if Warner Brothers made live-action movies of the Milestone comic characters like Static Shock, Icon, Rocket to replicate Marvel's success with Black Panther? I mean, if they're good, I think people might go see them. You just don't want them to of course, look like cash-ins or look like obligatory things, where it's like, oh, we had a movie starring a black man that was really popular, and so now whenever we have a movie starring a black guy, everybody must go, even if it's not good. You don't want to have that mentality. Make them because you have a story to tell, and make them because, it's totally fair to say because Black Panther was so successful, now there might be a market for more of these characters that might not have had the mass appeal that now Black Panther has had, and then use that as the opportunity to make those things. But make sure you've got a story and make sure that you've got some passion or some great ideas for those characters. I think a Static Shock movie could be really cool. I don't know anything about Icon. He shows up in Young Justice, and I was like, I don't know who this guy is. William Purcell, do you think Marvel will bring back the Fantastic Four comic? Mark my words, that will happen. Yeah, I would bet you money on that, because they're not having to fight with Fox anymore if Fox gets picked up by Disney, and I do think that's probably going to go through. Now, because that hasn't officially gone through yet, it is possible that they wait until that announcement happens, because Fox is playing things as business as usual right now, and Marvel doesn't like that they have the merchandising rights for those characters. But I also could see them finally lightening up on that as they're trying to bring fans back into their comics. And I know Fantastic Four doesn't have like a huge reader base where it's like, oh, if only we had Fantastic Four, we wouldn't have lost readers that didn't like the last stuff we did. But especially with the storyline they've been doing lately with some of Fantastic Four characters, is it Fate of the Four? Is that something else? I'm not even sure. I think they might be actually ramping up to do something with Fresh Start, so we'll find out. But I think that's inevitable. And I mean, it's obviously inevitable with Disney. If Disney definitely gets Fox, but I kind of think even if that were to end up not happening, it is inevitable. Blue Dragon 5. Wow, this is an interesting idea. Cap, would you ever consider doing a documentary on the Tick? There hasn't been one before. I love that idea. I really, really like that idea. I've been looking for another documentary project idea, and to do a movie about the background of the Tick, where I actually interviewed people, I would have to get Edlund, and I feel like that would be a very monstrously difficult thing to get accomplished. I feel like I would have to know somebody who knew somebody or something, but it could be cool to just do a documentary about the history of that character, and then just the big stories with that character, and not really interview a lot of people and just make it more of like a historical thing with narration. I guess that could be cool, but I would much rather talk to the people involved. I'm gonna noodle that. That's the best idea I've heard in a while, and as I keep suggesting, I would really like to make another documentary, and I keep asking people for ideas, because I haven't come up with the thing that I just really, really want to do, that I've got the passion to sink the money and time and into. But that's interesting. That's the best idea I've heard so far. Thanks, Blue Dragon 5. Donnie St. Pierre, could you do a GNN Revisited on movies that disturbed you as kids? I would love to hear Eric's list and more from you if you have any. I don't know if I would have any more big ones than the ones we did. I mean, we did like 10. But for folks that don't know what he's talking about, Vince and I years ago did, I can't believe how long ago this has been, but we did a video where we talked about movies that scared us when we were kids, that were... and I think a lot of them we just didn't go back to, or things that were weird that they scared us because they weren't really horror films, some of them. But yeah, I'll consider it, because it would be cool to get Eric's. That's true. I'm going to go ahead now and do a third batch here. If there's anything you really want to try to make sure that I get to this show, I've got about 5 minutes. Maybe I'll go a little bit longer. Go ahead and post those things now. And I'm not going to scroll back up, so feel free one time to repost something that I didn't get to. And I'm going to answer some more of these real fast, and then I'll try to do one more sweep real quick, unless this takes a long time. So let's see how I do. Good old gamer. Subtitle for the Tick documentary, What Makes Him Tick. That's great. Scott McCall, when can you start watching Teen Wolf again? I'm not sure when that's going to happen. I've just got so much stuff going on. I do want to get back to that, but I don't want to promise anything right now. Bob the Hun, do you think people behind Star Wars have a problem not listening to their fans but attacking them? I'm not sure. I don't really want to weigh in on that one. Just because I haven't really been looking at a whole lot of the reaction from the studio to the fan backlash from that movie, so I really don't have an opinion on that. Rockman, hi Rockman, good to see you, man. I think it's cool that Black Panther's backstory with his father's death was something we'd seen in another film, rather than a brief reference to something we've never seen. We got to see it play out. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And isn't it impressive how much personality and character and presence that guy has with as little screen time as he gets in both of those movies? He's incredible. Scott McCall, I really want to see you talk about the Transformers Prime TV series on Primetime Crisis. We did we did a watch through some of those. I'm trying to remember if we were just doing Transformers Prime on that show or if we did multiple Transformers shows. I think it was just Prime. So there is a video of us doing a live stream, doing commentaries on some of that show. We might eventually get back to it and talk about it more as a whole, because that was just me watching some episodes that the pilot I had seen, but Eric was showing me some other episodes that I hadn't, and just kind of a loosey-goosey, fun, off-the-cuff commentary project. Marathon. That's the word, marathon. Scott McCall, can you do a rewind on the Spectacular Spider-Man series? I would like to eventually. Again, it's not on the short list. Spectacular is one of those things that I probably would do an overview of before I did a top 10. I did a top 10 for the 90s Spider-Man show and I enjoyed doing that, and I think it turned out pretty well, but looking back on it, I kind of wish I'd done an overview thing instead, just because even though there's a lot of weird, fun, hilarious stuff to talk about episode to episode with that show, but it does have a running continuity, and so it was a little bit weird to do a top 10 kind of thing with that, but it was in that midpoint of it's got one and done episodes, but it's also this big overarching story kind of, or it's in some places it's forcing that. With something like Spectacular, it would be weird to do the top 10 thing instead of just doing a discussion on the story overall. And I finally did, with the weirdest thing ever, I finally did just an overview and not a top 10 episode thing with Who Wants to Be a Superhero, which is a reality show, and not the kind of thing you would do that with, which is why I had to do it that way. But at least I finally have kind of got my feet wet a little bit in the overview model, but still being in-depth and thorough. And I think I'd be better at it now after having done that. So yes, I hopefully eventually I will get to that. Duke thinks I should be Jonathan Frakes. That if we recast me, it would be Jonathan Frakes. I would love it if Jonathan Frakes played me. That would be great. But it would have to be because Jonathan Frakes, is older, so it'd have to be Jonathan Frakes playing middle-aged to older Captain Logan. People still asking me about who I would cast or what villain I want for Spider-Man Homecoming 2. I've talked about that before. What else? This is really interesting. Thanks for this question, Andrew Follett. Do you think superhero movie is a genre? I don't, because to me, superhero movies are just insert other genre plus characters with powers. Yeah, I think it can be both. The superhero genre, when we take any other genre or subgenre out of it, so not making just like a detective movie that's also a superhero movie or a crime drama that's also a superhero movie, although most superhero things that don't have an obvious other genre mixed with them are crime dramas. So I guess you could make the argument that every superhero thing that is just the genre of superhero is a crime drama. But when you go back and look at something like, go almost all the way back to the beginning, look at something like Fleischer Superman or something, that kind of thing strikes me as squarely the superhero genre. But you can also say, well, it's adventure first. Like you have the swashbuckling adventure hero, you have Zorro and things like that. That was, you could say that was superhero before superhero. So should superhero count as a genre? Is it like if we already kind of had that before we coined that term, then maybe it almost shouldn't count. I think we think of it now as a genre just because we have so many things that fall under the umbrella of a person wearing a costume that was in a comic book or based on comic book type stuff. And so weirdly, superhero becomes a subgenre of other things where it's like, it's, again, detective fiction, or it's a fantasy thing, or it's even, horror thriller. But the subgenre is superhero, Or you can almost look at it as like an umbrella, you know, where other things become, if not a subgenre of that, like married genres. So yeah, then the question is, because everybody, we tend to compare Westerns and superheroes, right? So you can make the same case with the Western, where okay, the Western we think of as a genre, but then whenever you look at a Western movie, much of the time they fall also under different headings, under different genres. They are cop and robber films, and they are sometimes like almost noir detective pieces. And so I think where we get hung up on the terminology with this is that it's kind of the name superhero, you know, as a genre, it's kind of more about the aesthetic of it, the trappings, than it is about what kind of story is being told. And I think that's where the semantic hiccup kind of happens. Love that question. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. I may try to noodle that out and write a little paper, a little video on that at some point. Some kind of scripted long form thing. I'm going to go for another 5 or 10 minutes, folks. A lot of great questions here. Oliver Gritty. Hey. How do you feel about whenever somebody says that or you know, says just Hayes and Success and all is Succession? All I can think about is Donkey Kong. Hey. How do you feel about Fox making as many Marvel movies as possible before the Disney takeover? Is that what they're doing? Is that what they're trying to do? Like, I don't really see it that way. It seems to me like, and I don't know, maybe I'm just buying into a talking point, but they've described it more as just business as usual. Like, they don't know if that's really going to happen, so they can't just not greenlight things. They were starting to make a lot more stuff after Days of Future Past. Before that seemed to be on the table, or maybe there was talk about that going all the way back that far, because we do know that discussion was happening for a long time. So I guess it's possible that they were you know, trying to milk as much money out of that as possible. But I mean, the thing is, they're getting you know, eaten up by Disney, but they're still going to be Fox. Like, they're still a studio. So I don't really know. And like I'm probably just ignorant about this particular topic. If that were what they were trying to do, I'm not really sure how it would be advantageous to them, unless it's just, well, we don't have to share money with Disney, so certain people make more money if we do it that way. I don't know. I kind of think it has more to do with just the success of some of the X-Men things and then Deadpool. That they're just looking at their properties and going, what else can we maybe get a hit out of, because Deadpool broke records. I think that's more of what's going on. Let's go ahead and answer just a few more now at the bottom of the list, or I should say the top of the list, the most recent things asked, and then I'm going to bid you adieu for today. Thanks a bunch for showing up, folks, and being here. Really appreciate it. Lots of really interesting questions today, and you guys are making me really work today. A lot of stuff that either I've been mentioned before or things that I was not prepared for at all, and it was very challenging. I appreciate it, guys. Kelly Jones, any other characters in the MCU you wish were fleshed out to the extent of Tony Stark or Steve Rogers? And my choice would be the Maximoff twins. There are characters that I'm hoping that will happen for as we move along. I think Vision is a really interesting character, but I think he needs a story all his own, or a story with Wanda. I think they should spin off maybe at some point and get their own movie, or we should do an Avengers movie that is really, really Vision-centered. But it'll be interesting to see how much he gets to do in Infinity War, because he's got an Infinity Gem in his head, and we see it come out of him. So I imagine we're going to, I mean, and of course that's happening, but I imagine he'll get some cool stuff to do in that. But he would have been my first pick. And then, as I keep saying, I really want Falcon to get his own movie and maybe a trilogy, because he's one of my favorite characters in that world. And Beyond that, I mean, obviously, a lot of people still really want a solo Hulk movie, and that can't happen because of distribution rights things. But that would be, you know, if wishes were horses, that's of course a thing that ought to happen again. Just because I think we finally, you know, nailed that character. Solar Dragon 007. Hello, hey Cap. Do you think the Bryan Singer allegations are what convinced Fox to give X-Men back to Marvel? No, I don't, because that's all part of a larger package. I mean, like Disney folding Fox into them, I don't think really has anything to do with, or doesn't primarily or only have to do with the Marvel thing. I think that's just a happy accident, or maybe not accident, but that's just kind of a happy side effect of the fact that, well, you know, X-Men, or like Disney has Marvel, and X-Men is a Marvel thing. So if Disney owns Fox, then they, by proxy, get X-Men back. If I'm understanding it right, that's all that's going on. If I'm understanding it right. Visitor Thurlow, why do you not particularly like Star Trek books? I'm near finishing collecting TNG novels. I have in the past had that problem. I've been trying to read more of them lately, and I've been kind of changing my tune on that a little bit. But before, a lot of it was just a lot of the books I read, the prose wasn't great. And I mean, I won't name any names talking about anything in particular, but especially, you know, in the 90s and early 2000s, I felt like a lot of the prose wasn't great, and they wanted to be TV shows before they were novels. And I want a novel to be a novel. So even though it's based on movies or it's based on TV shows, it still needs to be of the you know, literary medium that you're reading, and you don't want to page by page feel like the thing you're reading is desperate to be of some other medium. You know, I don't like to read a short story that wishes it was a comic book, or you know, read a book that wishes it was a movie. And that was the issue I had with a lot of those things. Reptile Dude 21, what is your favorite Rebirth title as of today, and why? What do you think is the strongest overall? I'm gonna have to kind of join the masses on this and say it is Tom King's Batman right now. But and also I'm behind on a lot of stuff. So like, I love New Superman, but I haven't read that in a few issues. And so it's not, and Metal is wonderful. So those are kind of the two things at the top of my list right now, but I haven't been reading even everything I've been buying. So that's as much as I want to weigh in on that at the moment. Robert Emmett asked me about Miracle Man, or excuse me, Mr. Miracle. Once again, I bought all those. I read the first issue. I haven't read any more of it yet. I got to go back and do that. Grady Childs, do you think Toy Story 4 should be canceled? I feel the story was wrapped up perfectly in the third. I feel like everything else is just extra stuff, and they should keep making original films. Let's see what they do with it. I don't immediately hate that idea. I do think things were wrapped up really well in 3, but I don't know what the you know, crux of 4 is going to be. So I mean, I don't want it to just be I don't want it to feel like a carbon copy of any of those movies, of course. And it's going to have to be about some new things, because I think we watched a child grow up, see what his you know, toys did for him and why they were important, and then saw him have to sadly give them up. And I don't want to see that again. So I mean, it needs to be about something else. And yeah, that dope channel. That's why I haven't talked about Mr. Miracle, because I just haven't been reading it. Really hard to keep up with everything. We're doing so much TV and movies and comics and, you know, et cetera, and I keep buying stacks and not getting around to reading them. And I'm trying to write this Batman Year thing, you know, and I have kids and a homeschooling. I'm in the middle of a whole lot of stuff, so I will get there eventually. Lately, I've been kind of stacking things up and reading more stuff when it's finished, or just reading what I really feel like sitting down and reading, and stuff that's easy to read month to month. So like, I keep up with Ninja Turtles, keep up with Power Rangers. Those things are pretty easy to remember what happens month to month, and they read like really good, solid monthly comics. I don't think Tom King's Batman reads as well month to month as it does issue to issue, because it's so nuanced. That, or excuse me, as it does, I said issue to issue, as it does reading, you know, in a sitting, like in trade. So I like to read those several issues at once when I can. It's nice that they double ship, and I think that at first I wasn't sure about his the way he was handling the double shipping thing, I've now been completely won over by it, and with his pacing and what he's able to get done in each issue. And I'm actually really glad they double ship now, because I won't have to wait 2 or 3 months, and I've got 4 or 6 issues to sit down and binge. So, folks, that is going to be it for me today. I know there's a lot of questions I didn't get to, but a million things, and hopefully I answered more today than I was able to last week. Join me again next Wednesday and come back with any questions that I didn't answer, and I will do my best to get to them. And if there's anything that you want me and Eric to try to answer together, like I said, send me a personal message on Facebook or leave comments. And Facebook's the best place to get a hold of me, but if you don't use Facebook, send me a comment or send me an email, and my email address is in the About section on YouTube for our channel. And Eric and I will try to answer as much stuff as we can also on the open forum. Excuse me, this is the open forum on what replaced the open forum, which is the letters pages. Once again, you guys are great. Sure appreciate you. We got a brand new episode, the first episode proper after the prologue of Batcap of the 48-Hour Halloween, coming out this Friday. Look forward to that. Also putting up the rest of the last omnibus and even some separate videos from the previous omnibus that I haven't managed to get up yet all this week, and also some comic vaults that I had forgotten to post that I didn't even realize didn't get posted from a little while back. So all that stuff and more coming to you this week into next week. Thanks a bunch for watching. You guys are wonderful. You guys are fantabulous, and I sure appreciate you. I am Captain Logan, and I'll see you again tomorrow with more videos.